I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
liberty and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all. And a little bit of grunge in there. Okay, so we'll go on to roll call. Madam Clerk, if you're on and audible.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to swear in Commissioner Fobbs before we go on, if I could. Is he present?
I am.
Oh, because I have his name on my roll call
Okay,
here.
go right ahead.
Commissioner Fobbs?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to read. I can hear you. I'm going to read this oath of office. Not going to have you repeat it this time unless you want to. I'm getting a little feedback, but we can. Let's try it. Let's try it. If you could raise your right hand and repeat after me, please.
Okay.
I, Wilbert Fobbs III,
Wilbert Fobbs III,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
Did we lose Yvette?
Okay, I think I'm coming back.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you
Yeah,
now.
we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what. Okay, we'll just carry on. That I will support the Constitution
That I will support the Constitution
of the United States,
of the United States,
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the State of Michigan,
of the State of Michigan,
uphold all federal laws,
uphold all federal laws,
state laws, and ordinances
and ordinances
of the City of Lathrup Village,
of the City of Lathrup Village.
and I will discharge my duties
And I will discharge my duties
of Planning Commissioner
of Planning Commissioner
for the City of Lathrup Village,
for the City of Lathrup Village,
Michigan,
Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Cheryl, to make my phone number 127.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Your term expires February 27th, 2023. I will mail you this oath for you to sign, and if you can get it back to me and I'll sign it, then I can email you a copy of your oath of office.
Wonderful. I'll put it in the Dropbox.
Okay, wonderful. Congratulations. Okay, now roll call. Chair Pietrowski,
Here.
Vice Chair Hammond,
Here.
Terry Thompson,
here,
Board Member Fobbs,
Here.
Member Hulieza,
Here.
Board Member Cantor.
Here. Do you hear me?
I can, yes, I can. And Board Member Stansberry.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
So we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is approval of the agenda. I assume everyone has had a chance to at least look at this. And if there are any questions or comments or changes to be recommended, now would be the time to entertain them for consideration.
Mr. Chair, I would like to discuss the order of the items under new business. 6, if we could move down in terms of order the capital improvement plan. I suspect that the zoning amendment are relevant to the site plan review. And if that's the case, then it should be the first item. If it's not relevant, then I propose that the site plan review be the first item. Nevertheless, I'm proposing that the capital improvement plan be the last item under the new business.
Okay, are there any objections to that? Susie, do you have any comments regarding that one specifically?
Well, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, I deferring or with reference to my email back to you about the order, there might be an opportunity to move things along or to address the site plan review quicker if we do make slight adjustments as opposed to none.
Well, the building materials discussion should happen certainly before the site plan review. I mean, we did the very breezy version of the capital improvements plan discussion in our kind of like dry run earlier. Jill, Cheryl, and myself. I think we can be able to, get through that quickly and carry on to the meat of it.
I would say that on item under B, under zoning amendments, although it lists building materials, there's an additional document in there that probably merits more discussion with regard to R1 and parking.
Yeah, I noticed, as a bit of an aside, I noticed that some of those pages got reordered. So that should actually go, that's supposed to be down in the comprehensive plan section. So
okay,
that just got funked out, that's all.
Okay, so we'll order the new business based on the new building materials, then to site plan review, and then to capital improvements and the additional item that's under the zoning amendments for discussion. And if there are no other adjustments, we'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as reordered.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I think we have to do a roll call, don't we, Cheryl?
A roll call.
Yes.
Since this is remotely. And that was Secretary Hammond and Commissioner Stansberry.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay. Roll call. Commissioner Fobbs.
Aye.
Oh, I can only see, all right.
Commissioner Hammond.
Yes.
Commissioner Hulieza.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor.
Yes.
Chair Piotrowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Stansberry.
Yes.
And Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Okay. So before we get into the zoning amendment portion, we have the public comment section for items that are not listed on the agenda. If there are any comments from the public
I
who
think before we
are
get to that, we
attending.
need to approve the meeting minutes from the previous meeting.
Oh, you're correct. See how functional we are here. So going back to the meeting minutes, if everyone has had a chance to review the meeting minutes from the previous meeting back in January. If there are no corrections or items to be discussed, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as they're written.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 21st, 2020.
I have one comment actually about the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay.
On page 3, under staff update, it's just the wrong spelling of the word site for site plan.
Oh, okay, thank you.
But that was it for me.
Okay. So spellings aside, with that noted and to be corrected, do we have a second on the motion to approve the meeting minutes? Okay, those in favor?
Roll call.
Aye.
I have a
Yes.
move and second. I have to do a roll call since we're doing the meeting remotely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for each roll call, I have to do one separately for each one. So,
Yep, I think we're all adjusting to that.
yeah, I know. So am I. Commissioner Hammond,
Yes.
Commissioner Hulieza,
Aye.
Commissioner Cantor,
Yes.
Chair Piotrowski,
Aye.
Commissioner Stansberry,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fobbs.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, now we can move on to the public portion, the public comment section. If there are any comments from the public regarding any items that are not listed on the agenda, we'll entertain them at this time.
And Mr. Chairman, I will make every effort to see when someone raises their hand, if they are an attendee or if they send a comment through the chat room. So if anyone has a question, please do so by either raising your hand or typing your question in the chat room. See anyone? I believe you can close the public comment.
Okay, we don't have to do a motion for that, or if we do, we'll close the public comment session and move on to new business. And we'll start out with the zoning amendments, building materials. And Jill, were you going to lead us through this? Or?
I will. Thank you. It's nice to see everybody. I'm glad that we can get together, even if it's just virtually. So as you'll recall, I'll just start here because there's too much text on that other slide. A couple of months ago, we were presented with a conceptual site plan that we'll actually be talking about shortly. And that involved an alternative type of building material that the ordinance doesn't quite accommodate. And you may recall that we had a similar question a few months before that. So it seems like a good time maybe to update the building material of the zoning ordinance. So as you can see, this is from section 5.14, and it specifies that, I'm going to move my little screen here, that all permanent buildings and exterior wall construction are required to be brick, natural stone, or masonry materials other than brick, as long as they meet a bunch of standards that are listed here. It seems as though this may be a little bit overly restrictive, and I think the Planning Commission has been willing to consider some different types of materials. And so we proposed a very simple building amendment to the zoning ordinance that would just say that the materials have to be high quality, durable, and attractive. And they may include either brick, natural stone, masonry materials other than brick. And then gives the Planning Commission a little bit more flexibility by saying alternative building materials may be permitted if the applicant demonstrates that the proposed materials achieve the goals noted. And so it's pretty straightforward. Tonight, we were just seeking your comments on that proposed amendment, and then asking if you would set a public hearing date for either May 19th or the next available meeting date that we're allowed to use. I can go back to that. So I'm available to answer questions on that.
So this is Jason speaking. This makes sense to me. Building materials have modernized and the technology has changed significantly, and there needs to be a bit more leeway, right? The restrictions are kind of focused on what materials were available not overly long ago, but long enough ago
Yeah.
Yeah, we need a mechanism to keep up with the changes in technology without having to explicitly include in our zoning ordinances each individual material that will become available. So I think it's reasonable, and especially looking through the packet and the information that's being provided in the site plan we're going to review today, provide some good insight into the quality and the testing that goes into the materials that would be considered. I think having those types of artifacts maybe serves better than just explicitly stating specific types of materials even in our ordinance. So I think this is a good amendment to support.
This is Bruce. I also agree with Jason. My only concern is that all of the adjectives in there are subjective, whereas before there were some definitive standards. So, who's to say what's high quality or durable? So I don't know if it still makes sense to keep some standards in there, or are the standards what's really driving the issue, in that some of these newer materials, while good materials, don't meet some of those prior standards that were in the ordinance.
I just wanted to second that. I was wondering the same thing of how then do we decide what is high quality, durable, and attractive?
And I think that's a good question, because I think it's subject to some level of interpretation and also for application. There might be materials that are chosen that might be deemed, while they might be durable, they might not be durable in how they're applied. I don't know if that really if we can get into that level in this sort of a document, but I guess I would ask the question, Jill, how are other communities handling these same materiality questions or issues in their documentation?
I think those are all really good comments. And I think generally speaking, most communities go more of this route, that they're interested in making that decision. You as a planning commission have that ability to make those kinds of subjective decisions. We've indicated through here, by retaining the types of materials, generally what you're looking for. So you're looking for a brick, a natural stone, or some sort of other material that's masonry material. We can exclude some things if you want or we can minimize certain types of materials. We can make it a little bit more specific. I do think that these types of standards are not particularly helpful. It's very specific, and I don't know that any of us have this actual material language of testing at our disposal. And as we evaluate, is it possible for us to really say, does it not meet the specific standards, but it meets other standards that are similar because this is specifically for brick. This next standard says, well, if it meets the same similar standard or same standards, well, but that's only for brick. So
right, and I'd have to admit that I have to check these material standards periodically just as a matter of my business. But there are so many standards out there that it's not something that you just retain at the tip, your fingertips, or at the top of your head, except for things that are, repeat instances.
Right.
And so I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah, so more communities will go this route, and then they may say, we want a certain percentage to be of this brick or natural stone, and then a certain percentage can be glass or wood, or a certain percentage can be trim pieces, to let you have some design flexibility. But many others just go this route and leave it up to the applicant to demonstrate to your satisfaction that those standards are met.
Does it? I'm sorry. Go ahead. This is Jason. I was just going to say, it's again referencing these the site plan that's in front of us today. There's a ton of information that supports the notion of quality and durability for the materials that are being proposed. Can we reference documentation similar to those types of reports, those types of right? Instead of like saying you need to provide this specific thing or comply with this specific standard, here are some examples of standards that the Planning Commission will consider, and these types of reports or similar reports for the materials that you're proposing should be included with your site plan. So, I mean, the wording I'm using is bad, but I think you get the idea. Right?
I do. We can do that.
Okay.
At least it cites then a recognizable standard for material that's been tested. Now, I know, and I can elaborate that testing is as good as what the testing is designed to do, and it's been accepted by the committees that put them forth, and the industries do drive that sometimes. So it's wise to evaluate them closely. I think generally we would rely on the design professionals who are recommending materials and choices for our business owners to be doing that work. And if we had reason to question anything or the use, then we would, might advise accordingly.
Now,
Jill, this is Les. I have a quick question. The subjectivity of the way this is proposed to be amended, that leaves it squarely in the hands of the Planning Commission to determine what's durable, what's attractive collectively, right?
Correct.
So as long as the applicant can present something to the commission via samples and reports that fit the commission's belief that it's durable and attractive, then this would be acceptable as broad enough for us to be able to make the decision as a committee, as opposed to trying to build something into this for them to give all this paperwork for us still to say, yeah, but we still don't think it's durable or attractive. Gotcha. I personally think that this is vague enough, but specific enough, and it puts the onus on the commission to say what they want it to be when the applicant brings in the samples and the reports that are going to tie to their site plan. So I think it works.
Right.
This is Charo.
Go ahead, Charo.
Thank you, Mark. Jill, does that give you enough feedback that you can add some of the standards that would inform any site plans to say these are the standards and these are what we hold, that these are the things that we would look at. I don't know if you have enough from us to add to this. And if that's the case, is it still doable to present this amendment on the next meeting?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, that way we could entertain any additional language. This is
Sure.
Sorry.
Jill, I had one quick question, and it really had to do with the builder on the other side. Does the proposal, just from your experience, open up ambiguity for, their planning? I don't want them to keep going back to the table because they don't know if they've actually spent money to get something set up, and when they present it to us, and have to keep going back to the table because they're really trying to figure out where we're at. So I just kind of wanted to understand from your experience, are other cities having, to your knowledge, builders that are constantly having to come back to the planning commission because they don't really have specifics?
I think it depends on the community and what, this is going to sound silly when I say it, but what ugly buildings were built and people kind of overreact to it. But in most communities, and the language that we have here is helpful because we do cite the specific kinds of materials that we're looking for. So I think it does give some example to an applicant. Plus, you rarely will get an application for something that Susie and I and our team haven't looked at and talked to them before they even get to the point where they're seeing you. And so we're usually able to say, no, that orange styrofoam map that you have on the side of the building is probably not going to be something that the Planning Commission is going to be comfortable with. And then leave it up to them to say, well, we've got another alternative, or this orange styrofoam thing is a key part of our identity, and we really think that we can do it well. And then that's up to them to demonstrate to you.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Good. And we do have other standards in the downtown village center district that are a little bit more specific. And I don't have that, I didn't pull that up, but we'll reference that in the information that we send back to you for our next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'll be helpful. I think like a revisit of this would allow us to address maybe some of those specifics or additional maybe standard information that we might want to generally make reference to as a kind of a blanket way of pointing towards quality, provided that this does not in any way interfere with our ability to make a decision on site plan, if that is a factor. The upcoming site plan review I was referring to.
Yeah, no, I don't think that this is timely in that it's consistent with the next item on your agenda, but I don't think you need to take any action on this before you can act on the site plan. I think the applicant has provided enough information that you are able to make a decision on that, and we'll get to that in a minute.
So then I'd recommend that we just revisit this at our next meeting, and we don't really have to take an action item on this right now, right? So let's move on then to the site plan review, Lathrup Village Shopping Center, 26710 Southfield Road.
Okay. Now I have some overview information, and then I know that the applicants are all here. And they are anxious to speak to you about their project and in particular the building materials. So just briefly, I don't know if I forget how to point to this on, there it is. This is the subject site, look at that. It's red, so you can't see it, but it's right here on Southfield Road between Coral Gables and Ramsgate. The site is about 3/4 of an acre and is currently developed with a 9,450 square foot commercial building. It's a 1-story building. It also has an asphalt parking lot, a dumpster, some landscaping, and a 5-foot brick concrete screening wall along the rear lot line. And the current building height is 18.5 feet. I've got a couple images for you. So we've just got kind of a bird's eye view. Here's Southfield Road. North is to the left. That shows the parking lot, the 2 access points. There's some shared access to the building to the north, as well as an alley that runs along the back side. You can also see a little bit of that open space that's here, and another little view of a little bit of like a close-up view to show you the current building materials if you're not familiar with it. The applicants are planning on updating the facade with a specific kind of fiber cement panel called Nichiha, as well as cultured stone and metal ribbed panels. They are planning on replacing the roof and adding a parapet that increases the building height, which is compliant. They are going to repair the parking lot and maintain the landscaping, along with adding 3 new plant beds along the Southfield Road side of the parking lot. They have new light fixtures proposed, and we asked that they submit a lighting plan on that, but that was really the only issue that we had other than the building materials. So here's the proposed west elevation. That is the front from Southfield Road. You'll see the parking area is not changing, and the building materials include the ledge stone here, the metal panels here, and the fiber cement panels here. It's a metal coping. And just shows you the south elevation here and the north elevation. This is an existing mechanical room. The trees are not representative of the trees that are currently there because those look like that, I think. But here's the before and the after view. So for your consideration are whether the proposed building material is consistent with section 5.4. The applicant did submit quite a packet of information on the proposed materials. It included a lot of test results indicating material strength and successful fire endurance and water resistance information. So your requested action tonight is to discuss whether the building materials meet the current ordinance standard and take action on the site plan. Again, the only other outstanding item in addition to the building materials were was the lighting plan. So
okay. Well, let's get started then with any discussion or questions anybody might have on the materials.
Yeah, this is Jason. So I looked through the packet and the reports that were provided. It's not my area of expertise, so they didn't really mean a whole lot to me. So my question, I guess, Jill, for you and your team is, reviewing that information, are there any concerns about those reports, or do they seem like their durability, quality, fire resistancy, all those metrics that are in those reports are consistent with high quality, durable materials?
I think to the extent that we were able to interpret those test results, I think they do. I think in addition, the photos that they shared of the other buildings in the area that are using that material were also helpful because I'm familiar with a couple of them. And so I do think that, that they are consistent with that. I do know that the applicant has a representative from Nichiha, I believe, to explain a little bit more detail about that. So it may be a good time to ask them some of those questions.
Well, and I'll just quickly comment that we did have a pre-application meeting with them where they did bring some of these samples to us. So we were able to get a feel for the materials themselves. And I mean, I am certainly no expert either, but they certainly appeared to meet that high quality, durable standard. But certainly let's let their Nichiha representatives and building materials experts chime in.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, is this
Yes.
Tom?
This is Tom Baldiff, yes. How can I answer any of your questions? What would you like to know?
This is regarding the Nichiha
Yes.
specifically. I guess the one question I would have has less probably to do with the, well, it has to do with the material. I'm an architect by background and in building technology area, so we look at and evaluate materials frequently, and we also tend to work on really high-end buildings that sometimes require you know, high-end materials, things that will last for 50 to 100 years. And I would start off with a comment that from my perspective, there's a lot of new materials that come out on the market and can be used for varying purposes. And in general, I find these suitable for the applications where they're being proposed. One exception I would ask about would be the proximity of cement panels in proximity to grade, specifically where they're shown on the elevations coming to ground near sidewalks, areas that might be subjected to snow melt, salt, etc., or possible impact from snow clearing equipment, whether it's just manual shovels, whatnot, and how well those materials are expected to hold up. Because one of the things I would recommend as an architect would be that base conditions at buildings be constructed with durable materials, and that's the only place where I guess I'm seeing any immediate concern in the materiality is those panels just near the base of the building and how they'll perform. And that's more of an advice
Can I answer that question?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm Lonnie Zimmerman, and I'm the architect with Siegel Tool Associates. The panels are not going to come down and touch the sidewalk. They're going to be held up, whatever the Nichiha recommendation is, 2, 4 inches, 6 inches. It's going to have a block base to it, so they will not be in contact with the sidewalk.
Okay, great. That answers my question, and that's the solution you've described is sounding consistent with what I would expect or would ask to see. And on another
Do you have
front,
any other questions?
not specifically on the Nichiha, but I do have questions about the roof. And my question regarding the roof is there's a reference made to, the roof is currently a hip roof, so it pitches in all directions. And there's a little bit of maybe ambiguity on what's happening on the ends. There's also a reference to EPDM being called out for on the new portion that is now going to also slope to the back. So my question would be, is the whole roof being replaced with EPDM? And what's that going to look like on the end conditions where the renderings appear to show shingles still in place? And I guess the question I have is, should shingles, my opinion is that if it's visible to the public, that it should be something architectural in nature that's more attractive to be seen. On a technical side, regarding the roof, since the roof is now all pitching to the back of the building, has the site drainage, which is gonna, I presume, handle the stormwater runoff, capable in the existing system of handling that and allowing it to drain off properly without becoming flooded during, you know, rainstorms that it's would be typically designed to handle. With
Our
maybe
engineer has looked at that, and we believe that the answer to that question is yes. It all pitches to the north slightly where the catch basin is, and it should be able to handle that. Your first question regarding the roof materials, anything that's basically going to be visible, we've done some updating since this design drawing was done, and anything that's going to be basically visible is going to be a shingle. it's not going to be, the EPDM is only going to be on the very low slope portion. What you see now in the picture, you can see that there's a very low slope approaching the back of the new wall. Now what we've done is we've pitched it up more, so again, you're seeing more of a shingle, which will match the existing shingle. And so there will not be any visible EPDM from the back. In the sides of the building, it's tricky on the sides of the building. There's definitely not going to be any EPDM visible. We're probably going to have the metal panels coming up a little bit higher than what you see here. It'll probably be a combination of shingles and metal roof on the sides, which is kind of what we're showing now. But it's going to be those materials. No EPDM visible. That's not the intent of it at all.
Okay. And how about the material on the back side of the parapet, which faces the neighborhood?
Well, what I'm saying is that we now are going to be pitching up at the back. Instead of you seeing the back side of the parapet as a vertical wall, we've been looking into that a little bit more carefully for structural reasons as well as for just aesthetic reasons. That's where we're pitching the roof up. So you're seeing a low slope roof going from about the ridge point of the existing roof, which is maybe 2/3 from the back to where you can see the pitch changes. Now it's going to pitch up more at a steeper angle, and that's where the new shingles are going to go. So that will be where the back of the parapet is now covered for the most part with the shingled roofing, because we didn't like the look of that either. My structural engineer didn't like the look of that because it means he's got some structural issues. So we feel it's a much better building by pitching it up, and it helps the appearance of it as well.
Okay. That answers my questions regarding that. Those were, I think, the two largest concerns I had. I'm just going to check my notes. Let's see. Okay, that addresses my questions regarding the materials. Now, it looks like there's some patch repair work that's being done in the parking lots and the resetting of the paving or the bumpers, car bumpers.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, did I intimidate everybody?
No, this is Jason. I didn't have those specific questions, but that information is incredibly helpful and really addresses a lot of the concerns I think that I would have if I knew enough to ask those questions. So yeah, there's nothing else going on here that I could see in the proposed site plan that had me concerned.
And I would say, in general, I think the proposed design is attractive, and bringing another one of our the buildings in the city up to a more current design aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think it'll look nice.
So I saw the information on the awnings, and I trust that those are elements that would they'll last as well as they last, and they'll have to be updated periodically based on their performance. But aside from that, I don't have any specific concerns regarding them.
Good.
So
now you guys just need to decide whether or not how you'd like to take action if there's no other additional discussion. I think
We want to entertain a motion to approve the site plan based on, let's see if there's any, if we're still waiting on the lighting or the confirmation of the lighting plan. So technically, I guess I'd say on approval of our city's engineers in their review of that, we could formulate a motion to approve the conditional approval of the site plan based on submittal of the lighting plan and lighting information for acceptance by the city's engineers, and then they can go on to the next step, I guess, which is to submit it, prepare the documents for building permits. So, Jason, were you gonna?
Yeah, this is Jason. So we talked a little bit earlier about the update to the ordinance around building materials, and obviously this proposal would use these new building materials, right, which are not necessarily in compliance with our existing ordinance. So I've got some question is about the order of events, right? If we need, can we approve a site plan that essentially accommodates for our intent to update the ordinance to allow a less restrictive building material code?
I don't know if I'd call it less restrictive, but more inclusive.
Okay. Yeah. Regardless of the description, it's like it's different than what we have in place today.
Right.
And I think our intention is to allow or to update the ordinance to accommodate for that. And so we want the site plan to also be able to take advantage of that. I just have a question about the order of events. Like, do we need to do something about modifying the ordinance before we can make an action on the site plan with these new building materials, or can we make an approval that essentially accommodates for the deviation from the existing ordinance?
I think in the, based on the information that the applicant provided, I think that you can say that it meets the standard about, if we go back, that you could say that it's your finding that they do meet the standards provided in section 5.14.
Got it. Okay. Makes sense.
Okay. So that additional piece would be part of the motion based on recognition or acceptance of the materials as being in compliance with the spirit of the current material requirements. So do we have a motion to approve the site plan?
So again, order of events type of question, because you noted, Mark, that we don't have a lighting plan. So now that when we wouldn't necessarily, I think what we're saying is we would defer to city engineers to approve the lighting plan once it's submitted, and we're basically approving the site plan or submitting a motion to the city council to approve the site plan.
No, you are approving the site plan.
Sorry.
Yeah, there's no motion to council on this one.
To approve the site plan contingent upon our city engineer approving the lighting plan.
That's correct.
So I will make such a motion.
Second.
Those in favor? Roll call time.
We gotta do roll call.
Roll call. Commissioner Julieza?
Aye.
Commissioner Cantor?
Yes.
Chair Piotrowski?
Aye.
Commissioner Stansberry?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fobbs?
Aye.
And Commissioner Hammond?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for answering the questions.
Yes.
Our pleasure.
And being well prepared for the with the documentation.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me.
For most of the documentation.
We expect to have the lighting plan in to Susie within a day or two.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
We can now move on to
Capital improvements.
capital improvement plan.
All right, so some of you have been through this before and some of you have not. But each year the city prepares a capital improvement plan, forecast capital improvements over a 6-year period. It's really a 5-year plan, but it's a 6-year plan because the first year of the CIP informs the city budget. So this is a requirement of the Planning Commission by the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. A formal hearing is not required, but they are a good way to do that, to engage the community about needed capital projects and available and planned resources. We have done public hearings with the Planning Commission in the past, but we are running close to the council budget planning season. It is upon us, and in trying to get the capital improvement plan together, the city council may hold the public hearing rather than the planning commission this year. The process is that we provide the department heads with forms and their current plan, then they provide back to us the list of their needs. And then we have a subcommittee meeting that is comprised of the department heads, the city manager, city administrator, and 2 planning commissioners. We all review the list and refine them as needed. Then the planning commission reviews, there's an optional public hearing, and then city council approval, and it goes right into city council budget preparation. So the changes, I thought it would be easier just to highlight the changes. You received a copy of the draft plan. Changes from 2019 to the 2024 plan were highlighted in yellow, just for ease. The rest of the projects were just bumped up to the next year. So for administration, just monitors, the DDA has flower baskets, light pole banners, some of the Southfield Road right-of-way parking. That would be the parking on the side street rights-of-way. And I'll let Susie talk a little bit more about that if needed, and then some bus stops. You'll note several projects with Parks and Recreation, and those are really placeholders until the recreation plan is completed this summer. And so we'll be updating the CIP, and next year we'll be starting it earlier.
Yes.
And yes, and so you'll expect to see those things change. None of those projects were included in the next, the first upcoming year, but they are placeholders. In addition, the speed trailer and some mobile radios for the police department. There's a match for a Complete Streets project, and then lead and copper detection program for the water. So the one thing that we're really excited about this year is the online dashboard. And I don't know if anybody had a chance to take it for a spin, but it's an online platform that's completely interactive. So the hope is that it's easier for residents and business owners to understand what capital improvements are being forecasted over the next 5 years, what the costs are by department, where the money is coming from, and where those projects are located. The idea is that through this way of planning capital improvements, we're able to more easily identify potential overlaps, so that when when we're doing a water project or we're doing a road project, that we're able to see what other projects may be happening in that same area, and then be able to be more efficient with the resources that we have. It's also really helpful for identifying the funding sources, because there may be things like, for example, recreation. If we say, well, we would like to get a recreation grant to either acquire a piece of property or to do a development project, we have to remember that the grant funds don't cover the whole project, and we need to plan that the city would be putting in 25, 35, 50% of the cost, and plan for that ahead, so that it doesn't come down to, oh, we can get this grant, oh, we forgot to budget for the that portion, our share of that. So I can take you out to that, but I want to just kind of finish that. I guess that was the end. The requested action is to discuss the CIP and accept the final draft and send it to City Council. So I can go back if you have any questions. I guess I'll just leave it there for a minute. Did anybody have an opportunity to do the online dashboard and play around with it?
I did.
What'd you
And
think?
I really liked it. Yeah, I thought it was really helpful for the things that you were saying, you know, just seeing where the different projects are taking place. And I liked seeing the funding sources split up. And I just think it was a really cool visual interactive way to see all the information.
Yeah, this is Jason. I had a chance to play with it too, and it definitely makes it easier to understand what is actually being requested by the various departments in the city and what the implications of those requests are. Where in the city do they actually have an effect physically, right? Again, the funding sources and the total cost of the projects and things like that. And the fact that you can, you know, adjust the map and focus in on the areas that are of interest or look at the entire thing as a whole. It's way easier to do it through an interactive map like this than it is to try and do it in spreadsheets.
Yes, I can show it to you real quick if you want to see.
Jill, this is Charo.
Yes.
Are there any great departure from the previous CIP?
Just those things that I outlined briefly. I don't know if Susie, if you want to talk about the DDA projects.
But in terms of the percentage of whatever the cost or the distribution, are there areas where there's you know, a significant peak or increase or decrease?
Well, I'll say at least from the DDA perspective, at least last year's, I mean, those were just placeholder projects, right? And I had, excuse me, last year when I started, I can't believe it was only a year ago, but last year, you know, I had kind of told the DDA board, I want to kind of get my feet under me before we start spending money. And so the streetscape improvements that they've been asking for, I mean, those are going to be the biggest visual changes, at least in my opinion. So I mean, that's a biggie, because that kind of activity hasn't happened for a little while at least. So and again, like Jill mentioned, the Parks and Rec placeholders, I mean, there's a lot of really big asks and project ideas that Chris has. So I think you know, it gives us an opportunity to kind of anticipate future projects from him too. So
Susie, to piggyback on that, this is Will. Like for an example, for the banners, was that actually a redesign or was that just purchasing new banners for the light pole?
Right now it's just the purchasing of new banners. We kind of are having to refocus a little bit what some of my anticipated project ideas were going to be for this year. I kind of had high hopes of doing some more marketing and design oriented activities. But so the picture that Jill has up here, I mean, those were the redesigned banners that we came up with last year. I would like to see more, just more seasonal change, or something that maybe more event specific for those banners. And I'll be honest, it is the installation trip charge that is the biggest expense for putting up the banners. So, but the idea is, you know, for those banners to get ourselves somewhat of a stockpile, right? So that we have, you know, maybe 4 or 5 different banners that we could rotate throughout the year and have longevity of visual clutter, you know, of visual interest along the road. So.
Well, I guess full disclosure, I made that banner years and years ago and donated
well,
it to the city.
I like it. No.
So I have PDF so you know, my wife and I did that project years and years ago. So if you're looking for more stuff, I'm sure that we know some folks that can probably donate that time.
Perfect. You and I are going to talk some more then.
Mr. Chairman, this is Cheryl Mitchell. I have a question as a point of information
Yes.
to Jill. Jill, as I'm looking at last year's capital improvement plan, it's a 6-year plan, and it was identified as being from 2019 to 2025. Should this one be to 2026, or did we miss something somewhere?
It should have been 2019 to 2024 last year. 2019, 2021, 22, 23, 24. That's 6.
Okay.
It's if we count the first year, 2020, if we count 2020 as year 1, then that does make 6 years. But it's up. I mean, we can name it 2021, 2026 if that's easier for you, but in the budgeting. Does the fiscal year start in 2020? Is that 2020 to 2021?
Correct.
Yes, that's our fiscal year.
And I think it makes sense for it to be the 2020 to 2025.
Okay.
So we may have just forgotten that last year.
So that's just a correction of the dates or the years.
Yes, but they're right on this slide.
Right. Okay. Right. I was going to say, make reference to you, Jill, when you were back to the online access, that it references province of Ontario on the map.
Does it? Oh, well, we will change that.
Province and state. So I said, oh, we've been annexed across the river.
We must have missed that. All right, we'll make that change. Thank you.
I have a question. This is Anna. In the so in the capital improvements plan, so some of the projects have ranking numbers. Can you explain the ranking process and why some would have TBD and then some are ranked?
Because that's the general process that we follow, is that the subcommittee goes through and does a ranking. So for example, projects, and there aren't any this year, but sometimes departments like the police department or the water department might have something that they have to do, a capital project that is to bring us into compliance with federal law, for example. So that's going to receive a higher ranking than, as important as the flower baskets are. That might be, I know, I just did an example. It was the first thing I saw on the page. They might not be as critical or as important in terms of how you prioritize the spending.
Come on, flowers. No.
I know. So we did do the ranking last year, and this year we did not do the ranking when we met with the subcommittee. For the most part, because there were things that were in there that were already ranked from last year. Parks and Recreation, as I said, really was a placeholder, and so there really weren't that many other projects to rank. But that will be part of our process going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So to that point, one suggestion that Mark and I had as the planning commissioners who were, participating in the pre-review step that Jill mentioned, was that the departments could, if they wanted to, provide this type of their input to the rankings, because it could help you, for example, with the number of projects that are in the Parks and Recreation plan, right? Which ones are the highest priority to our Parks and Recreation director, right? And maybe if you can't get funding to do all of them, only some of them, then you can use those rankings as a mechanism to decide which ones you actually want to invest in, right? So,
right, or put the emphasis certainly where they think. Yeah, certainly. I mean, we're interested in knowing what the departments feel is important and should be pursued.
Right, and really how the process works when there are more projects and there's more of a, I don't want to say fight for the dollars, but all the department heads have their own project that they feel are the most important projects. But part of the process is having the department heads participate in that subcommittee and do the rankings together so that they understand why their project may not get funded and someone else's project might get funded. It might be because they have to comply with certain standards or regulations or new laws. But having that broader understanding amongst staff, and hopefully it's expressed in the planning document, helps the community understand how those decisions are made too. So we're still evolving the process here, but that's where we're headed. So I think every year we take a couple steps forward, maybe we take a step back, but we're generally moving in the right direction, I think.
Jill, this is Chad. Can you go back to the screen that shows the dashboard, please? I think sorry. Yes, that one. So the total cost of 5.6 million, and that's spread out across the 5 years?
Correct.
Okay. But so these are rolling plans, right?
Yes.
So if there was a commitment, say on water, that there must have been some sort of baseline to establish that there is some sort of fixed plan for a particular improvement plan. So how does that work? Because once you decide on an improvement plan on a particular project, then it is assumed then in that first year that you would need the continuous commitment on subsequent years, right?
Yes.
So in that sense, the decision on that first year informs then, it is fixed, in other words. Is that the case?
For the most part it is, but things happen with funding, things happen elsewhere. There can be emergencies, there can be other demands that alter that from time to time. So I wouldn't say that once it's in the CIP, it's locked in and you can't touch it. It's an evolving document. So every year, that's why we do this, because things do change. Does that answer your question?
How much do you think of this CIP has how much of it is fixed and variable? Because I think that there are projects that you have to commit to, right? To a certain degree, and to see it to its conclusion.
Yes. And then it's up to the city council to prepare the budgets and identify funding sources for those things. And that's, I don't know if Bruce wants to talk a little bit about that as well, about how that process works.
I wonder if it's possible, because that's what I've thought of, I think I may have asked this across the years, is to identify those projects, for instance, that say, you know what, these started in these years, and it's presumed that there was a certain fund commitment to this. And so we are at this point where we are almost done. So in other words, do those get to a certain degree priorities because they are near to conclusion?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes, I would say that's true.
So it's a rolling plan.
Mm-hmm. It is. So that's a good example of a project that might receive a higher priority because it's part of an ongoing program of improvements.
Yeah, wouldn't the water mains for Santa Barbara, was a 3-year project. So, we're through year 1, year 2 is this year, and then, there's a portion of it for next year. So right. I would imagine that that's an example of what you're saying. I mean, year 2 and 3 are going to have a higher priority because we're in the middle of the project.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm just going to say, as an example, one of the items that drew some attention, because it's been on here for a couple of years now, and that's the request of the police department for a new police department, and that's obviously a big ticket item. It's something that I'm sure has been part of a wish list, but it also requires the will of city council and the community to decide or to come up with a funding plan or something along those lines to bring that one to fruition.
Right.
So I think I caught a glimpse here that since our discussion that had been updated to at least maybe a study or something that might be a little bit more directed towards moving that along, or maybe a decision to whether it's something that can be supported.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And was something that's been on, as you said, the list for, well, probably since we started doing these, I think 4 years ago. And so how do you either move that project forward towards implementation, or is there a point where we say, you know, we've had this on here, we do the study, we say, gosh, you know what, it's really, we've got to figure out an alternative because it's not going to work, that we can't build a new station. But how else can we solve this need? And certainly that's part of why we are doing all of this work, is to be able to identify what additional resources are needed, and figure out alternative ways to be able to meet the needs that the city has.
So if there are, I guess, no other questions or points of discussion, I kind of put it to the commission to consider a recommendation that this be passed along to the city council for their approval.
I have one question. Are we raising typos right now?
You can send them to us extra if you want.
Just in an email?
Sure.
Okay, I'll do that.
Unless it's something that you think changes the intent, or.
No.
Okay. Yeah, just send us a quick note.
Okay.
Perfect.
Can I make a motion to approve the plan?
So it would be a motion to for council to accept and schedule and hold the public hearing.
Scott,
Okay.
did you say, were you preferring that be a recommendation?
Yeah, the motion that planning commission would make would be a recommendation for city council to accept and conduct the public hearing.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept or to recommend the capital improvements plan, and for the city council to hold a public hearing.
I'll second that motion. This is Jason.
Okay, those in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call. Commissioner Cantor,
Yes.
Chair Petrowski,
Aye.
Commissioner Stansberry,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fobbs,
Aye.
Commissioner Hammond,
Yes.
and Commissioner Liaison.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, I think we have one more item under
Comprehensive plan.
comprehensive plan.
All right. You guys are rocking and rolling through this agenda. Well done so far. I probably should have said it. I should have waited until we were done.
Are we going to skip the parking, the R1?
Oh, no, we're going to get to that.
No.
Okay, all right.
Don't you worry.
All right, great.
All right, so we're going to talk about a couple of things. Really, it's all about the open house. So the next step in the planning process is to hold an open house to share with the community what we've learned so far in terms of existing conditions, goals and objectives, and just gonna mute for a second. And to solicit some input on some of the ideas that we have that we want to refine for the planning document itself. So unfortunately, we have this limit on public gatherings that we have in place right now, and that's likely to continue. Even should we get back to the point where we don't have to shelter in place, I don't know how excited people are going to be to come out to a public meeting. Frankly, even when we didn't have sheltering in place, people weren't thrilled with coming out to public meetings. So part of what we had talked about with the planning process is to include an online component for the master plan to go along with the regular open house. Only now we're going to do it all virtually. We think that we're hoping that maybe we even get a little bit more participation because we're trying to make something that's a little bit different. And our idea is to have that run from May 1st to May 15th. So I don't have anything to show you with it now, but if you would like to see, I have, I think it's here. No, not that one, here. We are working on one for the city of Madison Heights, and theirs is going to go probably live this week. But I did want to show you real quick, generally what it's about. So it's an online platform. It'll have some explanation. It talks a little bit about why we're doing this for them and their primary issues. Yours are going to be different. And then present some demographic data. So it's an somewhat interactive website that allows people to scroll through, read a bunch of information about existing conditions. I'm just going to whip through those kind of quick. And then we have some input opportunities. So here, viewers will be able to provide some input to make a word cloud, so they can click on that and it will take them to this site. They put in the words, and when they come back to the site, they'll see their words pop up on the screen and make a word cloud. That's kind of a fun way to get people started, to feel like, oh, okay, I can see how this is working. Then we get into some of the more specific details that Madison Heights has. They're really concerned with transportation and mobility, and giving some ideas about how to improve walking and bicycling in the city. So this will take them out to that site again. They'll be able to vote based on the little picture and a description of what that is, and then see the results, see how other people are feeling. And then going through, we've got a discussion about neighborhoods, and then at the end, we have a map, and on this map, people will be able to click. It's not set up yet because I'm in preview mode, but they'll be able to click on it and make a comment about the spot on the map that they have identified. It'll be a place where people could write, we've got sidewalk problems over here, or this building has been empty for 5 years, what's going on? Or I love this park, can we improve it a little bit? Or I love my neighborhood and my neighbors are so nice. They can put whatever they want. And then they'll be able to view the results on that map there. So that is just kind of a brief overview of, whoops, what we're going to try to do. Go back here. Right. Keeps taking me to that spot. Okay, thanks for your patience with that. So that's the kind of thing that we're hoping to do to generate some input. It's interactive, it gives people information, they can take their time with it. There's a variety of different ways they can provide their input. And we hope that we get some good response from folks in Lathrup Village. Does anybody have any questions about that?
So this is Jason. Why 2 weeks? Why not longer or shorter?
2 weeks seems like a good amount of time to, like, we don't like to give people too long because then they put it off. And nobody, it just is like, oh yeah, I'll get to it. If you give people like a shorter timeline, then they feel a little bit more compelled to respond.
How?
Go ahead.
That totally makes sense. It's great.
Okay.
How are we going to promote this? How do we get more people to participate?
Well, you are going to be required to share it with 10 people.
That's fair.
And I mean, it is going to be on all of our, obviously all of our social media online platforms. But really, we are going to need you as planning commissioners to, help distribute the link. I mean, you know me, I've spammed you enough with different emails. So we will be asking everyone to share it and help us promote it.
What mechanisms are we going to provide to people who either aren't tech savvy or don't have internet or computers to be able to provide input?
The open
Bill,
house,
you want to take that one?
yeah, the open house is primarily focused on that online platform. And with the current situation, I think it's difficult to provide any other place where people can do it. But I think certainly we could just make some handouts available, and we could put them at City Hall, and people can put them back in the Dropbox when they finish. So we can make those available, or we could make it so that some of those things can be downloaded. Well, you can't download it if you don't have internet.
Yeah, it doesn't really help. I mean, what I'm thinking about is like for an actual open house that would take place, in a scheduled basis at City Hall or in the community room. It's an opportunity there for people to physically come for sheltering in place, and downloading doesn't really help you. But I recognize the environment is weird, so it's not like we can just go door to door. But at least if we provide some mechanism for people to provide some written input, then maybe we get a couple of additional inputs for people that otherwise wouldn't be able to participate.
Yeah. So we'll have to think about that. Like I really appreciate that comment though, because it is important to be as inclusive as we can. But we need to be able to give people something to respond to. And so maybe there's a way, maybe Susie, maybe we can put some things in the window of like the community room. Is there a way people could just like look at the window and be able to fill out a comment card and stick it in the Dropbox?
I mean, that sounds like a pretty fun idea to me.
Well,
or could we have, I'm sorry, can we have one of those banners made that we put on the posts out by Southfield Road and City Hall?
Maybe Mr. Hobbs can help us with that.
I mean, we could do, like, what would the banner direct people
to the city's website?
To the city's website? We could do that.
I think it could direct people to the website, but also, somehow, hopefully, in not too many words, say, call the city for more information, because that gives people an opportunity if they don't have a computer to call the city and find out, make some alternative arrangement to get.
Oh, but so we've been researching how to do things like this, and how to reach out and get new and different kinds of engagement, especially now. And there is one that is all telephone based. All right, we'll figure something out.
Yeah, Jill, this is Will. I actually like the telephone concept because the shelter in place. I just don't know how much traffic and how many people are going to see a banner or see City Hall, to be honest. But telephone obviously is definitely an option, even with prompts. So that way we can actually kind of get those questions, and it doesn't matter if it just records the answer. That would be, I think, paramount.
We will look into that. Now, this won't be the only opportunity either that people will have to participate. Your meetings are going to continue to be open to the public as they are online. And eventually we'll get back to the point where we can meet in person, and we will have a public hearing. And likely before the public hearing, we'll do a little open house that's before the public hearing to give people the opportunity to ask questions and learn more before the official legal requirement of a public hearing. So it's not the only time people can participate, but
yeah, I think that's good, because I see the dates that are like on the slide that's right here, and I'm thinking on the bright side that people are free to move about, or granted, whether they've got trepidations or not. My thinking is towards the fact that people might not want to be looking at their computers.
Yeah,
They might
fair.
want to be, you know, anything but, or maybe they're hooked because they've gotten accustomed to it. I mean, it could
Right.
go in different directions, I suppose. So, yeah, options for capturing information and input will be interesting and a little challenging, I think, in the coming months.
All right. Well, good. That's some great feedback, and we will work on some non-computer based alternative that is in a scale that's keeping with the size of the project. So one of the things, though, or actually the next two items are part of this conversation. So where we were talking about specific things in the other community, this is something that's specific to Lathrup Village. I think this was included in the last master plan, and yet when it came time for implementation following the adoption of the last master plan, it generated a lot of confusion. So I think it's important for us to present this information again in a way that helps people understand why we need, which is actually the next slide because I forgot to take it out, that I had a duplicate, but the background on why the city may need to consider alternatives to the current parking arrangement. So certainly we all know because of Southfield Road reconstruction, to try to facilitate redevelopment, to avoid people parking on side streets, we need to find ways to accommodate that. And you've developed this concept over several years, and we have some illustrations. And to help people understand that and gauge their level of support or interest in it, as well as say, that's, you know, ask really, well, what other ideas do you have to accommodate parking for redevelopment? I think that's an important additional step. So what else is there? And maybe people won't like this idea, but hopefully the second question helps people think there needs to be something that we need to do. So there's obviously more information than this that we would try to put together in a way that makes sense for folks so that they can see what we're trying to accomplish. Any comments on that?
I would think that this is something that's appropriate. I think if we're really trying to make some headway and seeing some more significant change in the development of the corridor, that, you know, options like this need to be available. Now, the challenge in the past has always been, or has been, the taking of properties that are residential and people be getting concerned of what that's going to do with what they're familiar with and accustomed to. So I think there's some issues with, or potential issues within the community for, you know, wanting change, but not knowing what the implications for change or encouraging change to happen without fear or trepidation of what it's going to do to the neighborhoods that they know and love currently.
Right.
That could be, you know, totally not seeing or not looking at specific things, which might be eyesores or conditions that have an opportunity for greater improvement.
I think this is a really important point because, you know, when the Michigan First expansion happened, right, there was a lot of friction, right, amongst people in our community about that. And so we need to be really sensitive to that, right? I mean, changes may need to happen in order for us to be able to accommodate the needs of business, but there needs to be, it can't be one way or the other. It can't be all in, you know, just protecting residential neighborhoods and their ability to stay as they are. Can't just be that, but that does need to be part of the equation. At the same time, we can't expect businesses to want to operate in our city if we're not going to be providing them with the opportunities to develop the infrastructure to support their business. And parking is a big part of that for a lot of businesses.
And I think a key part of this is in the imagery or in the solutions. We have to have solutions that are respectful to pedestrian traffic, to what people see, what they experience, and I guess a bigger vision of what what it might make possible, and to have it be as attractive as possible. Showing something like that, I suppose, can be dangerous, depending on, this is what you sell, this is what you get, because developers can dictate, what will happen, and we'd certainly be interested in accepting new concepts for the community to kind of work towards our goals. Sometimes our visions are for improvement aren't always necessarily as great, or they might not turn out to be as great, but we've got to make some sort of push to work in that direction, I think.
I think it's important to have this conversation. And again, this won't be the only time that you do this through the planning process, but we've tried the idea of creating the zoning amendment based on the last master plan. This was included in it then. But I think the Planning Commission has felt like really hesitant to move forward on it without significant public involvement, at least raising the issue again with the community to get some direction and perspective. Right, it's like I said, you already included it as part of the last master plan, so it's not like it's a radical departure. It's really just not really, but kind of saying, by the way, we had this in the last plan 5 years ago, and we're keeping it, and here's why. And be on the lookout for some zoning amendments to support this that would include these strategies. And it's really much more of an educational component, and ask for, as we develop zoning language, what should we consider? So it's more than should we or shouldn't we, but how should we do it?
And I think if we present it to community members in a way as succinctly as you just put it, Jill, that helps out a lot, as opposed to just putting a gigantic pile of paper that's the master plan in front of people, and they have to tease out the information. Like, we need to be able to highlight for people, like, we know this is a hot button issue, let's highlight it, right? Let's make sure that people are aware of, look, this is part of the strategy. We're going to be considering zoning ordinance changes to support it. If you have a strong feeling or input about it, please share it with us. Like, literally in a bulleted list that's no longer than half a page long, we should be able to somehow convey that information, right? I think the open house will help a lot in that regard, right? In addition to the ongoing conversations about developing the plan.
Yeah, and I think if we can phrase it actually in the manner of, how can you help us? What ideas do you have for making a solution like this as appealing and is serving to the community and the neighborhoods, as well as just the city tax rolls, if that's the issue.
Excellent. All right, well, then the last thing that we want to include are the redevelopment sites. And there shouldn't really be any surprises with this. The one in the middle is the school. It was the school last time. It's going to continue to be the school. On the left is House of the Woods property. And then the one on the right is a vacant property between Rainbow and Margate on the east side of Southfield. So there, if you can picture them, we have the northwest area, sort of the central area, and the southeast area. So we're kind of dividing it up between the different parts of the city so that everybody in each quadrant-ish has an opportunity to engage with something that's near them. Really leaving it pretty open to just generate ideas at this point about things people might like to see, things they don't want to see, what they might want it to look like. And then that's just more information for you for further discussions as we move forward through the process.
Okay.
That's about it.
I have a question. So Are we using comprehensive plan and master plan interchangeably?
We are using it as a comprehensive plan because we're including the recreation plan and the downtown plan as part of it. The master plan it's a good question. The master plan is the master plan for land use and the component of the comprehensive plan. But in this case, the comprehensive plan will be all of those components together.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, good.
Okay, if we don't have any other further questions, we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which I think I'm getting lost, but let's see here. Priority
Other
development
matters.
sites. Down to other matters for discussion. I have a question, since we have this image on the map, or on the screen right now, and that is a while back, the City Council was entertaining thoughts and ideas from, I think, developers on those three, I think it's 3 parcels that are part of the old House in the Woods site. Whatever happened with that study or that outreach?
It's still going on. You know, we talked about it for a while, then it dropped off our radar for a while, then we talked about it for a while, then it dropped off the radar. We've taken some steps in the interim in terms of having the property looked at. I believe we had a survey done at one point, or a survey to determine what the value of the property is. I know in our last meeting on Monday, actually yesterday, it was brought up to be an agenda item for our next meeting. So I think we're going to be revisiting it, and I think most of us are at the point where it's like we just need to figure out what we need to do and do it and stop talking about it. So hopefully we'll take some action on it, or at least make some steps starting out with our next meeting.
Okay. Any other questions or matters people want to discuss? Status of the townhouses on 11 Mile near east of Southfield. Phase, I think it's 3. Do we have any word from the property owner on whether they're going ahead with the 2 buildings up front, which were, I think, still part of the site plan approval that we revisited? Oh, I don't know how long it's probably been, a year already or more.
They are moving forward. They're wrapping up phase 2. There were just some issues regarding the landscaping that they were revisiting, and they just submitted updated drawings for that for the engineer to look at yesterday, I think. So as soon as they get that wrapped up, they're going to move, I think, on phase 3.
So the way this is structured right now, they don't have occupancy on this as individual portions, or do they? I don't think I've seen any activity there, or at least anyone occupying the building that's there. So is the plan for them to complete the other buildings before the whole thing goes to the market?
No, I don't think that's the plan at all. I think that they've been really pushing hard to finish up these site issues for phase 2. And I think they really want to make a push to get them occupied as soon as possible.
Okay. I was just curious how that was going to work with the construction out front, and wondering, because it looked like they looked pretty finished, at least from the outside, and I know the site has got some rough edges that looked like they were being taken care of, but and the gas station?
No update. He's fallen off the face of the planet. He has not responded to a single email that or any sort of communication I've sent out in the last however many months you've been asking.
I wouldn't be surprised recently with what's going on and it creating financial havoc for folks.
Right. Well, and who knows? I mean, the last phase he was in was working with the state to get his approval on the underground stuff. So who knows how all of this may or may not have impacted that.
Okay.
So.
All right, we'll just have to keep tabs on the process and then the approval that they were granted for this, and whether or not they're going to end up having to revisit or come back.
I don't think so. I mean, to me, they're making, even though I haven't heard from them, I mean, he's still, you know, they're still making progress, and they've been moving forward,
Okay.
albeit extremely slow. I'm not to the point of like, hey man, is your project ever going to happen or not?
Okay, so we still have proof that things are happening. It's just slow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, those are the things that I could think of. If anyone else has got anything, if not, we'll move on to general communications, correspondence, legal update.
Nothing for me tonight.
Anything on?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It wasn't my part, but since I'm speaking, Cheryl, I just wanted to let you know that the City Council will be holding the public hearing on the capital improvement plan at a special meeting on May 4th, which is a Monday at 6 p.m.
Okay.
And then I was just gonna let you guys know that, so a lot of what I've been doing for the last month is communicating with our businesses, and really trying to make them aware of all of the different multitude of financial resources available. Cheryl and I both participated in Oakland County's Small Business Stabilization Fund. The county was broken up into districts. We're in District 10 with Southfield. We had over 600 businesses apply within our district, and about 50 of those were for Lathrup Village residents. So we were part of that kind of whittling down process. So we've got 15 businesses that we've recommended to receive funding. The county is got a fairly aggressive yet vague timeline for getting the funds out to everyone. Really, I mean, they've stressed that they want to try and get funds out by the end of the month. They've not yet made the notifications to the businesses that have been selected at this point, but they're hoping to get that done this week and get the paperwork all tied up that they need to get before, so they can make those deposits into accounts. So that's the biggie. Please go visit your restaurants. Jagged Fork's the only one that's not open at this moment for carry out. I do have a list of the businesses. I just need to get that into a pretty format so I can post it online. So that's the quick and dirty of things for me.
Okay. Jill, I assume there's no. Are there any planning updates to share, or you've done a lot of talking already? So. Okay. We'll move on. We have a motion for adjournment.
Mark, I've got one thing real quick.
Oh, sure. Okay, go ahead.
Just want to let everybody know that we do have a town hall scheduled this coming Thursday and this coming Sunday. The one on Thursday is at 7 p.m. The one on Sunday is at 3 p.m. To seek input for 3 potential road plans, as well as ditch improvement plans that the infrastructure committee has been working on. We were supposed to have a town hall about a little over a month ago, but obviously the COVID situation has canceled that, so we're doing it virtually. So the information on how to connect is available on the city website. It's available on the city Facebook site, as well as Villagers. So hopefully all of you will be able to make one of those two, and also if you can broadcast that to your own social networks, your other residents that you talk to, and let them know about it, that would be great.
I was going to be facetious with a big sign that says, "We're raising your taxes." No.
Yeah.
Get everyone's attention. No, but yeah. Seriously, that's good. I think the community will be interested. Let's do what we can to get the message out. So, and I know I was aware of it already from Cheryl's, I think, passing that information along.
Right.
So, okay. It's been a long evening, I think. But we had a lot to catch up on, and we haven't had a meeting in a while. So if we have I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, and we can, I'll go and relax for the rest of the evening, hopefully.
This is Jason. I'll make the motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Those in favor? Roll call.
Well, it's not really necessary for the adjournment. So
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You're
It's got an
adjourned.
old hat already.
Right.
All right.
All right,
Let's
great job,
motion
everyone.
adjourned.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good
Have
night.
a good
Good night, everyone.
day.
Everybody.
Have a good one.
Thank you, Mark.